be up to President Trump or the next president after that to decide whether to use any of this capability. And so far, I mean, it seems pretty obvious that he hasn't, nor could we see any evidence that Trump had sought to undo anything that Obama had set in motion here.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for coming on. It's a really important read. I really encourage folks to go to the Washington Post and take a look at it. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, joining me now, Tony Blinken, former Deputy National Security Advisor and Deputy Secretary of State to President Obama and in the Obama administration. Tony, it's great to see you again.
Thanks, Kate. Good to be here.
So Greg laid it out a little bit. I mean, it's a big read, a big report that they did, looking back at the process of how it went down and the level of struggle within the Obama administration to the response. Everything that you've seen in this report so far, now that it's out there, is the Post accurate?
Yeah, they did a terrific job in reconstructing what happened, a lot of the deliberations, a lot of the concerns. But when you go back, this was a moving picture. It's not like we had an immediate, clear snapshot of what the Russians were up to. It evolved over time. At first we thought they were simply trying to do what they always do, which was pull information, see if they could get something that they'd use later down the road. Then it looked like they were trying to basically interfere in the election, mostly by creating doubt about our institutions. That's part of the reason.
Even letting themselves be known that they were trying to
exactly. And that's part of the reason why, as we were deliberating this, we thought the more we play this up in public, the more we play their game. We actually create even further doubt by making this into a big public matter. That was one of the things that was a concern. The other thing that we thought they were doing is, at one point, we thought they were actually trying to interfere in the electoral systems themselves, and we made massive efforts to make sure they couldn't do that. All of this, though, led to two things. First, President Obama issued a very stark warning to President Putin in September at the G20 conference in China. And what we saw, or what we thought we saw after that, is it looked like the Russians stopped their efforts to actually get stuff. But the damage was already done. They had taken information before, they passed it along to cutouts like WikiLeaks, and it still continued to come out. So we thought we had deterred them from doing more, and then the thought was, let's wait till after the election to look at how we can punish them.
Of course, hindsight, yes, but there are a lot of folks feel differently and how things should have gone out. I want to get to that in a second, but also that quote that Greg Miller had from a former administration official, it sticks out. This former administration official says, "It is the hardest thing about my entire time in government to defend. I feel like we sort of choked." Do you feel like you choked?
No, I don't think we choked, and of course you can go back and say, well, maybe the judgment was wrong, maybe we should have acted differently, maybe we should have done certain things that we didn't do. But given everything we were dealing with, given, first of all, again, the perception that Russia's main objective was to undermine confidence in the elections, that was really one thing that motivated us to be careful about how we play this in public. It turned out it was really only later that there was a consensus view that not only were they trying to undermine confidence in the elections, they were actually trying to defeat Hillary Clinton and elect Donald Trump. Now, if that picture had been clearer sooner, maybe we would have done more. There was another element, okay, that was important. We thought on something like this it was really important to try to speak with one voice and show a united front. We went to Congress in September to bring this information to them. The Post article reflects this.
Yes.
And to our surprise, and I'd say even shock, a number of leaders in Congress on the Republican side accused us of playing politics. They didn't believe it. They said we were making it up.
Yeah, the Washington Post quotes Mitch McConnell and cites Mitch McConnell saying that he actually at the moment did not believe the intelligence. Mitch McConnell did not respond to a request for comment on that to the Washington Post. But you know now that there are Democrats on Capitol Hill who were frustrated looking back on how things played out. Adam Schiff is one of them. And you look no further than just in a hearing that he had with former Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson. He expressed that in the hearing. Here's just a moment for our viewers to remind them.
Why did it take the administration so long to make a public statement that a foreign adversary was trying to influence the American election? The statement didn't come until October. Why did we wait from July till October to make that statement?
Well, Congressman, I'm going to disagree with your premise that there was some type of delay. This was a big decision, and there were a lot of considerations that went into it.
One of the considerations that Jay Johnson even notes right there, Tony, just after that, is that there was one candidate who was saying that this election was going to be rigged against him. Was politics a consideration?
Look, I think to some extent it was. And
is that okay?
Look, in retrospect, you could say, you know what? You should always put that to the side and just do what the right thing is. But again, the concern was it was politics, but in the broadest sense. You had one candidate saying that the election was going to be rigged. You had Russia trying to sow doubt in our institutions, in our democracy, in our election. So the more you play it up yourself, the more you actually feed exactly what the Russians were trying to advance, which is sowing doubt.
Can you answer just real quick? There is a thought that one of the reasons that the president decided to go slower, wait, was that he thought Hillary Clinton was going to win. At the moment in the polls, she was up. So he thought the outcome is going to be okay anyway. We can deal with this after the fact. Can you respond to that?
Look, I think the main motivating factor was, one, not wanting to advance the Russians' own game by playing this up. Two, trying to figure out how we could stop them from doing what they were doing. And again, I think the president's warning to Putin seemed to have that effect. But after all, Jay Johnson and the Director of National Intelligence put out an unprecedented statement in early October, raising these concerns to the American public. The very same day, the Access Hollywood tape came out and drowned out the whole story. So, you know, strange things happen too. But on balance, I would say we thought we were playing it the right way.
No regrets in your view?
There are always regrets when you go back and look at something, because hindsight's 20/20.
It sure is. Great to see you, Tony. Thanks for
Kate.
coming in.
Great to be here.
Thank you. Much more to come on that. Brand new this morning, though, the president talking about his tapes admission and what bothers him now about Robert Mueller, the special counselor investigating the Russian meddling affair. That's next. Plus, first Madonna, then Kathy Griffin. Now Captain Jack Sparrow jumping the shark. What Johnny Depp said about the president and an assassination. That's coming up. Brand new this morning, President Trump is now publicly criticizing special counsel Bob Mueller, the man leading the main investigation, of course, into Russia's meddling in the election and the president's firing of former FBI Director James Comey. Listen to this.
He's very, very good friends with Comey, which is very bothersome, but he's also, we're going to have to see. I mean, we're going to have to see in terms, look, there has been no obstruction. There has been no collusion. There has been leaking by Comey, but there's been no collusion, no obstruction, and virtually everybody agrees to that. So we'll have to see. I can say that the people that have been hired are all Hillary Clinton supporters. Some of them worked for Hillary Clinton. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous if you want to know the truth from that standpoint. But Robert Mueller's an honorable man, and hopefully he'll come up with an honorable solution.
Some of the attorneys that were hired have contributed to Democrats over time. Some of them, though, have contributed to both Democrats and Republicans. Just want to make sure that's out there. Those comments came just after the president admitted what many expected that he what many already expected, that he did not record conversations with James Comey, ending weeks of speculation that the president himself started. Joining me right now, former U.S. Attorney Michael Moore. He's a CNN legal analyst. And Michael Zeldin is here as well, who served as assistant to Special Counselor Bob Mueller at the Justice Department, CNN national security analyst and former spokesman for the National Security Council under President Obama. Sean Turner is here, and CNN political analyst and White House correspondent for Politico, Tara Palmieri. Great to see you all. Thanks so much for being here. Michael Zeldin, first to you. You worked with Bob Mueller at the Justice Department. Do you have a sense, just because the president brought it up as a problem, saying that they're very, very close, do you have a sense of how close of friends Bob Mueller and James Comey are, and how much of a problem you think that is today?
I don't think it's a problem at all. They could be best of friends, and Bob Mueller knows what his mandate is under the Constitution and under the order of Rosenstein, and he's going to fulfill that mandate. Friendship, you know, be damned, if you will. So I don't see that as an issue. The president, in fact, even said Mueller is an honorable person at the end of his statement, and that's the correct answer. Mueller is an honorable person. He will do the right thing. I have no hesitation at all in thinking that the friendship will not interfere with this.
That is an important bit of this. Another important bit of this, I know Michael Zeldin's want to get on this one as well, but Michael Moore, what do you think the president, though, is trying then to do here? Do you think he's trying to discredit Bob Mueller? What does this get him?
You know, I think he's probably doing the same thing that he's done since the campaign, and that is when somebody starts getting close and nipping on his heels a little bit, he starts to attack them. He damns them with faint praise, and then he turns around and starts to talk about maybe they have a conflict. He did the same thing to Ted Cruz. He did. You can go down the list of candidates that he ran against. So he's probably just trying to cast some doubt in case things turn against him. He can go back, just like he did in the election. I mean, he said during the election, well, this thing's rigged against me. Well, we know now. We know what was going on. And I think really he's just coming in trying to plant those seeds of doubt. I don't think that the relationship between Bob Mueller and Comey is anything to be alarmed about, and nor do I think his comment about appointing Democrats matters. I mean, really, everybody who's appointed by the president right now is likely a supporter of President Trump. So, I mean, I just don't know that those things, I think he's throwing red herrings out there to try to throw the public off and trying to keep us guessing. I mean, this goes into the same basket as his taping comment. You know, we don't know until the end of the day.
We'll get to tape. We'll get to tapes in just one second. Sean, jump in on this though. I mean, as Michael says, he thinks he's just trying to sow seeds of doubt, plant seeds of doubt about the special counsel, and if he's doing it, he clearly thinks this will help him. Will it?
Yeah, you know, I don't think it will. I think at this point, as Michael points out, this is kind of the president's MO. But I think that where he's really making his mistake here is, you know, look, if Bob Mueller was an unknown entity, then the president might be able to say these things, and, you know, people might go look without a real understanding of whether or not that's true or not. But when the president says these things about Bob Mueller, when he says these things about Jim Comey, look, these people are known entities. They have a reputation. Everyone knows that their reputation is beyond reproach. So I don't think that this strategy is going to work with regard to Bob Mueller, and I think the president, as I've said many times, will be well served to simply take a step back from this. Let Bob Mueller and the team that he's putting together do their job. And in the end, I think that the president does that. I think that the damage that he's already done to himself by making all of these comments, you know, that he'll at least stop that by not making any further comments against Bob Mueller.
And kind of, Tara, with regard to the ongoing investigation and how much it does bother the president, clearly. I mean, this is something that keeps him up at night and wakes him up early in the morning. There's new reporting by the Washington Post that there's a new strategy in place to try to help deal with that with his legal team, that someone gets on the phone with him early in the morning, like 6:30, lets him hash it out in hopes that then he won't, you know, he'll be able to get on to the business of the day and not stew over this. Is there any evidence that that strategy is working?
It's unclear that strategy is working because he's already started firing off tweets, although we know that yesterday was a planned tweet that was drafted with the communications department to address the tapes issue. It was even pre-leaked to a reporter an hour before the actual tweet came out saying that he did not in fact tweet. So maybe they're becoming a little bit more strategic with the tweets, and perhaps the president, who really does hold grudges, is benefiting from being able to speak in the morning because he tends to wake up angry, according to some of his aides that I've spoken to, that he can go to bed at night seeming okay, but he slept on it. He has some talks with his friends in the evening. He wakes up, he watches the morning shows, and he's angry, and that's how he's starting his day. I don't think any executive, especially the commander-in-chief, should start their day that way. So clearly his team is starting to learn how to manage him a bit. But from what I've heard from the White House officials that I've spoken to, they really do have to tone him down. They say a lot of the things he wants to put in tweets are, you know, farther than hyperbole, and that he needs to be restrained often. So this is actually a full-time job.
Let's talk about that one planned statement that came up from the president yesterday on the tapes. Michael Zeldin. This ends the speculation of 41 days, which many people thought that there was no recording. But I want to actually play for you how Sean Spicer today explained the tweet and explained exactly what they were trying to do with the whole tapes conversation to begin with. Listen to this.
The reality is that he wanted to make sure that the truth came out, and by talking about something like tapes, made people have to, made Comey in particular, think to himself, I better be honest, I better tell the truth about the circumstances regarding the situation.
So what he wanted to do was try to make sure, by doing it, that Comey would tell the truth when testifying. Does that have legal fallout?
Well, firstly, it doesn't resonate as being ingenuous. It strikes me, firstly, Comey is going to testify honestly, period. He's an honest guy. He swore to tell the truth. He's going to tell the truth. And he did tell the truth. This strikes me more along the intimidation than it is along the let's encourage him to be truthful. I think that the effort to say he better hope that there are truth in these tapes that is a veiled threat. And I think that that's what this was, more than it was an aspirational statement that Comey would be truthful, and it was encouraging him to do the right thing, you know, FBI Director Comey.
The second part of it, as we're getting to it, Sean, is that President Trump suggested in his tweet, and Kellyanne Conway actually went further in discussing it this morning, in saying that he didn't tape it, but very clearly leaving open the possibility that someone else may have taped something, as in the intelligence community. Can you address that?
Yeah, Kate, and I have to tell you that I think that aspect of this tweet, particularly if, as Tara said, if this was a tweet that was vetted with people on the president's team, then it is unconscionable that no one said to the president, Mr. President, there is absolutely no reason to attack your intelligence community and to insinuate that people in the IC might actually be surveilling you or listening to your or taping your conversations. Look, the president really has to understand that the intelligence community exists to support him and to provide him with the information that he needs to make the decisions to be able to protect this country, his most important job. So, you know, when I read that, I really felt for all of my former colleagues in the intelligence community, because all they want to do is provide the president with decision advantage, and I just think there was absolutely no reason for that, you know, not so subtle swipe at the IC.
Yeah, not so subtle. Thank you all so very much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Coming up for us, Johnny Depp becoming the latest celebrity to cross the line. What he said about President Trump that has the Secret Service now taking note. Plus, the controversial Republican healthcare plan right now in serious jeopardy as several Republican senators refuse to support it at the moment. What are they demanding, and where is this thing heading? It was one of the best-kept secrets on Capitol Hill. Now it could spark one of the biggest showdowns in the Senate Republican health care plan. It's drawing anger from Democrats. No surprise. They're upset that it could gut essential benefits for folks, which could mean less coverage and fewer treatment options for patients, including those with pre-existing conditions. It also phases out Medicaid expansion starting in 2021. But what is surprising is how many Republicans are also a no-go right now. 4 GOP senators have gone public with their opposition to the plan for various reasons. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, he can only serve to lose 2 GOP votes to still get this thing over the line. His goal is to hold a vote on this next week. Now, President Trump says that he supports the bill, despite promising, when we talk about Medicaid and long-term Medicaid cuts, despite during the campaign promising to not cut Medicaid. Let's talk more about this right now with former Democratic Senator Max Baucus. He played a key role in ushering through Obamacare when Democrats passed it 7 years ago. And former Republican Congressman from South Carolina, Bob Inglis. He was known for his work across the aisle with Democrats, as dangerous as that can be these days. Gentlemen, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for coming in. So, Senator, first to you. Democrats call this plan mean. President Obama joined in on that yesterday in issuing this statement he put out on Facebook. Let me read you part of it. He said this: simply put, if there's a chance you might get sick, get old, or start a family, this bill will do you harm. And small tweaks over the course of the next couple weeks under the guise of making this bill easier to stomach cannot change the fundamental meanness at the core of this legislation. Do you think this legislation, do you think this bill is mean, or do you think that's politics talking?
Frankly, I think it's mean, because it's about an $880 billion cut in health care benefits to lower-income people and the seniors, and it's a big tax break to the most wealthy of us in the same amount. That's mean. That's not right. That's morally wrong for the United States of America to give a big tax cut to the most wealthy, at the same time cut health benefits for the poorest.
Congressman, conservatives, though, I'm saying, that aren't happy with how this is, they say it doesn't go far enough. One of the things that they say is that this bill does actually more to rescue Obamacare than it does to repeal it, which is what they've run on so many times. Should Republicans be happy about this bill?
Well, I think that what Republicans are trying to do, of course, is balance the budget. They're also trying to preserve a private health insurance system. The challenge with doing that is if you don't have an individual mandate, which we used to be for as conservatives, but then we became against it when it became Barack Obama's thing. If you don't have the individual mandate, it's really hard to offer guaranteed coverage regardless of pre-existing conditions. And so that's the dilemma. Yes, try to balance the budget, but if you're going to preserve a private system of health insurance, you got to figure out how to make a way to get everybody covered and keep them covered. And that's what's playing out right now, is that tension.
Senator, what is your advice, though, at this point to your Democratic colleagues right now? I mean, they have very little power to do anything about this other than complain, much like Republicans did when Democrats pushed through Obamacare.
Right. You know, I think Senator McConnell will get 50 votes. That's the magic number, 50. and he'll twist arms. He'll twist arms on the right. He'll twist arms on the left. He'll get to 50. He's going to get this passed. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Democrats, in the meantime, should just say what's happening. That is, expose what's in the bill. The big 800-pound gorilla here, really, that nobody's really addressing, is that our American health care system, which is much more expensive on a per-person basis than other countries. And basically, it's because of a lot of inefficiencies that we do not really want to address because they're difficult to address, partly because there's just so much money in the healthcare system today. And we have to find a way to cut costs that way rather than cutting the cost of healthcare benefits to the low-income people.
Well, let's talk about health care benefits and the health insurance program, Medicaid, for low-income Americans. Congressman, the White House was asked today to respond to changes to Medicaid that the bill brings about. Kellyanne Conway responded, and she takes issue with how folks are describing what is in the Republican plan. Listen to this.
Only in Washington would something like this be called a cut, where over time there are protections in place for the disabled, for the elderly, for the poor, for the non-working poor, for children, for pregnant women. And it's going to allow states to decide what they need to help those in need.
Congressman, do you agree with Kellyanne Conway? I mean, the president campaigned on no cutting Medicaid. Can he say he's not supporting cuts with this bill?
No, I would disagree with Kellyanne Conway. I think that be careful what you ask for, you might just get it. And so what's happening here is if you cap Medicaid and send it as a block grant to the states, then a whole bunch of part-time legislatures, like in the senator's state and like in my state, are forced upon this thought of how do you structure a healthcare system? Well, and with a cap on what you can spend on it, gee, careful what you ask for, you might just get it. So in other words, what may be the long-term consequence here that I'm very concerned about as a conservative is that the country realizes, gee, we had this thing called Obamacare that maybe we needed to adjust, but then we ended up with this thing that leaves people without coverage or finding out that they've got lifetime caps. You know, I can offer you real cheap insurance if you let me cap the lifetime coverage for you, or maybe exclude cancer, or maybe exclude mental health. I can offer you some real cheap insurance. But when you show up at the hospital in a compassionate Judeo-Christian society, we're going to care for you, and then we're going to shift that cost onto other people. So I'm afraid as a conservative that long term we may be winning a little battle here and losing a great big war.
Well, a lot more to be learned about how this plan. A lot of folks still reading through it, looking at the implications, waiting for the congressional estimate, budget office estimate that comes out next week, and then a vote by the end of next week. Gentlemen, thanks for coming in. Coming up for us, if Democrats want Nancy Pelosi gone, she does not care. She says that she has support and she loves the fight. Hear about the closed-door meeting about her future as she dismisses criticism from her own party. Plus, Johnny Depp under fire and the Secret Service taking note after he talks about assassinating the president. That is coming up. Outrage this morning from all sides of the political divide over what actor Johnny Depp said to a crowd at a film festival. Watch this.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president? I want to clarify, I'm not an actor.
Joining me right now, Guy Cecil. He is the head of the Democratic Super PAC, Priorities USA. And Keith Boykin is here, CNN political commentator and former Clinton White House aide. Guys, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Keith, Johnny Depp, did he go too far?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's not a good idea for anyone to threaten assassination of a president, even as a joke. It's not a good idea when Ted Nugent did it with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. It's not a good idea when Donald Trump himself did it, when he talked about Second Amendment remedies toward the election if he lost last year. And I think that we have far too much advocacy of serious violence against people in this country already after the whole Steve Scalise shooting and the Gabby Gifford shootings we've had. It would be good if the President of the United States would actually tamp down some of that violence.
Well, okay, yes, come from the top is one thing, but also, I mean, Guy, let me bring you in on this. Democrats went crazy, and rightfully so. If you want to talk, Ted Nugent is one example that Keith brings up, said dangerous things about Barack Obama. no doubt. We don't need to return to what he actually said. So shouldn't Democrats also be going crazy about this, to be intellectually honest?
Yes. I don't think there's any Democrat that would support what Johnny Depp said or what Ted Nugent said. And I think, you know, both sides, I'm not looking to get my political guidance and moral judgment from Johnny Depp or Ted Nugent. And I think both of them and people that are considering talking...
political compass, yeah.
I think that's a pretty reasonable approach to this. And the other thing I would say is what it really does is it distracts, because instead of another segment talking about an immoral health care bill, instead of another segment about the disaster of a verdict on the murder of Philando Castillo, we are talking about an actor. We are talking about ridiculous comments. And so
right,
we would be much better to focus
out.
on what's happening. Of course, absolutely.
Right, but it should be called out. And Guy's basically making the point, Keith, and you can jump on it. It's not like you can, yes, you can say Johnny Depp stop, Kathy Griffin stop, everybody stop on the left. But does this help Democrats at all?
No, it doesn't help Democrats. It doesn't help anyone. It's not good to have this kind of divisive rhetoric in the discourse. And, you know, I think what Guy is doing is actually an indictment of you and me. It's an indictment of the media. It's an indictment of us because we keep focusing on these stories.
No, but what am I supposed to do?
I'm not saying that you shouldn't do your job or that I shouldn't be here talking about it, but I'm saying we in the media keep focusing on these stories. And it's not that Ted Nugent or Johnny Depp are any sort of important people in our society that we have to listen to them politically, but we know that when they say something controversial, everybody in the media is going to talk about it. And I don't mean this as a criticism of you or anybody on CNN or any other network. It's just a reality. That's the way the system works.
It still deserves to be called out. Let's talk about something else that makes everyone happy, right? Yes. Okay, Guy. Nancy Pelosi. Democrats meeting behind closed doors last night, about a dozen of them, to try to talk about whether they can push her out from leadership. She's defiant and basically says, bring it on, I'm not going anywhere. Is it time for new leadership in the House? What's your take?
Look, I think it's always natural after an election to take an assessment of where we are as a party. But Nancy Pelosi is not the problem, and I think some context is important here. You know, in 2009, Democrats won a hard-fought special election in New York. We were excited about it. We bragged about it. And a year later, what happened? Republicans swept into the majority in the House of Representatives. And so again, this is 12 Democrats or a handful of Democrats talking about this. Nancy Pelosi did not run John Ossoff's campaign. She did not write his television ads. We need to look at each campaign individually. And the fact is, we need to be talking about health care. Democrats meeting in private rooms talking about Nancy Pelosi distracts from the fact that 74 million Americans are going to be affected by Medicaid cuts, that Republicans are trying to raise taxes on seniors, eliminate pre-existing condition protections. This is what Democrats should be talking about, not process arguments about a special election in a Republican district.
One defense for Pelosi, Keith, is always that she is a fundraising machine. She brings in a lot of money for her members, for the party. But one of the Democrats calling for change in leadership told John Berman earlier today, he basically posed a question. He says, well, what has that fundraising gotten us? Does he have a point?
Yes and no. First of all, I didn't know I was going to be agreeing with Guy today because he's been so on message about everything he said, but I think he's exactly right about the fact that we should be focusing on those other issues instead of the process issue, we as a party. But the reality is that Nancy Pelosi is not the head of the DCCC. She's not the one who runs the campaigns. And I personally think...
But why then are Republicans, I mean, even the president tweeted it, it would be the worst thing for the Republican Party for Nancy Pelosi to go.
They hate Nancy Pelosi. They hate Kamala Harris. They hate Elizabeth Warren. They hate Hillary Clinton. They hate a lot of prominent women.
You think it's sexist?
I think it is sexism. I don't think it's entirely sexism, but sexism is clearly contributing to the animosity towards some of these powerful women, the Maxine Waters of the world. And I think it's time for Democrats not to be concerned about that so much that we fall into the trap of buying into the rhetoric of what the right is using. We did this with the Hillary Clinton campaign. We don't need to do it with Nancy Pelosi. Let's focus on honing our message. Let's focus on, we have a winning message and we have the winning demographics, you know, and that's what I think we're starting to see see that we are losing these midterm and special elections, but we win presidential elections because people turn out. How do we get people to turn out in those midterm elections? How do we get them to turn out in those special
But that's what
elections?
these
That's
Democrats are
the next
saying.
question.
That we did not have the right message. That's why we didn't win this election.
It's not the message. It's the people, the young people and people of color are the base of the Democratic Party. I firmly believe this. And that base does not turn out in midterm elections and in off-year and special elections in the way they do in presidential elections. Our challenge as a party is to try to get those people to turn out in those other elections, not just the presidential elections.
Keith, it's great to see you. Guy, it's great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. We are moments away right now from President Trump. He is going to be signing a bill that's aimed at taking a big step in fixing the Veterans Affairs Department. This is a big moment. Drew Griffin is standing by for more on this as we're waiting for the president. This moment will be starting any minute at the White House. Drew, of anyone you know the most about what hasn't been done to fix the VA, what efforts are trying to be made, lay it out for us. Where do things stand right now as we wait to see this moment happen?
Well, you know, the VA has two huge problems, in my opinion. One, the federal government is trying to run a top-quality health care institution for veterans, and overall, it's just not economically feasible.
Ladies and gentlemen.
But as they're announcing the president there, but politically you can't get rid of the VA, right? So the second problem is they have systemic management problems, top to bottom, that have allowed these scandals and these whistleblowers being retaliated against and not fixing the real problems in the healthcare. That's what this bill is aimed to do, trying, once again, to get rid of or give the Secretary of the VA the power to get rid of these bureaucrats who are seen as a roadblock to any kind of modifications or reforms that can be made at the VA.
But that's what you saw with your reporting. When the scandals were uncovered, there was an effort. I do recall in your reporting, they knew people there had been wrongdoing, and they had people to target, but they had such a hard time getting those people out.
You know, you can't get rid of somebody who has massive DUI arrests. You can't get rid of a VA employee, really. It's really hard to if they're sitting in front of the computer watching pornography. Similarly, Kate, you can't get rid of just really, really bad, incompetent managers. Now, in 2014, in reaction to all the reporting, they did pass a VA reform bill, which also gave powers to the VA Secretary, Bob McDonnell, to get rid of some of the bad managers, some of the bad actors. But, you know, overall, Bob McDonnell decided not to act. So here's another bill coming through. It's a Whistleblower Protection Act. It's an act that's going to give Secretary Shulkin, who you see there, more powers to get rid of the dead weight, I would say, but only if he chooses to, only if he actually takes the time, takes the effort to get rid of these managers. And there's a caveat with that. You just can't get rid of managers without having somebody to fill that position. The VA also has a problem with attracting very high-level management because of the problems at the VA and also because of the restrictions on how much it can pay if it's trying to attract private practitioners to come in and help with the VA problem.
That's an excellent point. Drew, stand by with me. Everyone stand by. We're going to get in a quick break right after this. President Trump speaking live.
Occupational therapies. I knew that such injuries were a risk of the enlistment that I made. What I was not prepared for was coming home to a broken VA system. I wasn't prepared to wait 57 days for a signature on a piece of paper so that my only prosthetic limb could be repaired. I wasn't prepared to be asked to make a 3-hour round trip so that just last year they could check to see if I still had my serious combat injuries. I wasn't prepared to watch my wife beg, plead, and make countless phone calls so that I could receive what was often basic and necessary medical care. But today is a new day, and this administration has fulfilled its promise that the veteran is empowered and the veteran is in charge of his or her own care. Under the previous administration, I waited over 3.5 years for required adaptive changes to be made so that I could safely reside in my own home. Under President Trump, with the assistance of Secretary Shulkin, these changes were made within weeks. Today, our President, Donald Trump, will sign this important bill into law that will ensure real accountability for our nation's veterans. Dr. Shulkin will be empowered to ensure that the VA adheres to the standard of excellence it promotes, and that the employees who are at the VA are the ones that have a servant's heart for those that have worn our nation's uniform. The most difficult part of my war injuries were coming home to such a broken system. Thank you, President Trump and Secretary Shulkin, for ensuring that we are not forgotten and that we will receive the care we need and deserve. Thank you.
All right, we're listening right there. Speaker, I believe it is Sergeant Michael Verardo speaking about his experience with the VA and difficulties there. We're going to take another quick break with President Trump right after this. Any moment now, we're waiting to hear from President Trump, who will be coming in to speak about the Veterans Affairs Administration, but also he will be signing legislation into law, Veterans Affairs Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act of 2016, something he promised very much during the campaign is to take care of the nation's veterans, something he says that he's taking a step toward today by signing this legislation into law. Let me bring in Drew Griffin one more time. Drew, as we were just listening to that sergeant, as he was telling about his story, his experience, and difficulties with the VA, these are stories that you've heard time and time again in your extensive reporting about problems at the VA. Do you get a sense, is it getting better?
You know, there are signs it's getting better in some areas, in some pockets, Kate, but I don't know this person's story. It's a story I've heard many, many times. I sat with a woman in Chicago just in April. She was trying to make an appointment for her husband. She's on the phone for a half an hour, and she's told her husband's eye doctor is going to take place in September, 5 months from now. And why I'm so skeptical about the improvement is it really rests on the shoulders of that person there, Secretary Shulkin. And you have to keep in mind, Secretary Shulkin was the Undersecretary of Health since July of 2015. Yeah. So for a year and a half under President Obama, he ran VA health care. And I assume he was running VA health care when this young man was still waiting for care. And he says he didn't get care until President Trump was sworn in. So why didn't he? I think that's a question people should ask Secretary Shulkin, should they get the chance. Time and time again, the VA promises they're going to reform, they're going to make changes. This is yet another reform bill, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's one thing to sign a bill. It's another thing to see the changes, which clearly are slow and difficult to make in such a problematic system that is intertwined when it comes to government health care being run by the VA. President Trump speaking now. Let's listen in.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. That's really greatly appreciated. And thank you to Secretary Shulkin for that introduction and for your really tireless efforts, David, to protect those who have really been protecting all of us for so long. They're great, great people. And you know what I'm talking about, right? Congratulations. In just a short time, we've already achieved transformative change at the VA. And believe me, we're just getting started. We have so many people that have been so helpful right here in the room, and Tom and all my friends. It's been fantastic. The enthusiasm for the Veterans Administration and for making it right for our great veterans has been incredible, and I want to thank all of them. One of my greatest honors and joys during the presidential campaign was the time I spent going all across the country with our nation's really and truly incredible veterans. In their courage, their dignity, and their selfless sacrifice, they represent the very best of us. Our veterans have fulfilled their duty to this nation, and now we must fulfill our duty to them. So to every veteran who is here with us today, I just want to say two very simple words. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You are the warriors and heroes who have won our freedom, and we will never forget what you have done for all of us, ever. As you all know, all too well. For many years, the government failed to keep its promises to our veterans. We all remember the nightmare that veterans suffered during the VA scandals that were exposed a few years ago. Veterans were put on secret wait lists, given the wrong medication, given the bad treatments, and ignored in moments of crisis for them. Many veterans died waiting for a simple doctor's appointment. What happened was a national disgrace, and yet some of the employees involved in these scandals remained on the payrolls. Outdated laws kept the government from holding those who failed our veterans accountable. Today, we are finally changing those laws. It wasn't easy, but we did have some fantastic help to make sure that the scandal of what we suffered so recently never, ever happens again, and that our veterans can get the care they so richly deserve. So you just heard from Sergeant Michael Ferraro. Great. I didn't get to shake your hand, Michael. Huh? Get up, Michael. He gets up better than I do. Thank you, Michael. Michael lost 2 limbs in defending our country, and yet he had to wait 57 days to get his prosthetic leg repaired. It's a long time, Michael. And over 3.5 years for modifications to make his house more accessible. What happened to Michael is happening to many, but it's rarely happening under our leadership and David's leadership anymore. That I can tell you. Our wounded warriors have given everything they have to this nation, and we owe them everything we have in return, and we're taking care of it. Today, we are taking a very historic action to transform the VA by enacting the VA Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act. This was not easy. This was not an easy one. And it's one that they've wanted to do, Michael, you know, for a long time, for many years. Couldn't get it done. We got it done. This is one of the largest reforms to the VA in its history. It's a reform that I campaigned on, and now I am thrilled to be able to sign that promise into law. VA accountability is essential to making sure that our veterans are treated with the respect they have so richly earned through their blood, sweat, and tears. This law will finally give the VA secretary, who is, by the way, just doing some job, and he's doing it with this and with the heart. Believe me. It gives the Secretary the authority to remove federal employees who fail and endanger our veterans, and to do so quickly and effectively. It's been a long time since you've heard those words. Those entrusted with the sacred duty of serving our veterans will be held accountable for the care they provide. It's a big statement. At the same time, this bill protects whistleblowers who do the right thing. We want to reward, cherish, and promote the many dedicated employees at the VA. This legislation also gives the VA Secretary the authority to appoint new